Hey guys, it's Kevin of the Murphy Guys, and we're reviewing this a movie that I don't think many people actually have known about, but I've wanted to see it for a while now, and I finally checked it out, and that is The Death of Stalin. And basically what The Death of Stalin is essentially about is we basically center in on 1953 Russia, one of the worst times for any nation pretty much. I mean, this is when communism was at an all-time high. Everyone is, loyal to like Stalin, obviously after what happened, Hitler's no longer in charge, Stalin's now in charge and things like that. But Stalin ends up gravely ill and, he does in fact end up dying. So throughout the rest of the film, everyone else is trying to figure out really what to do, what they're going to do in his funeral, and kind of start to plot against one another and struggle for control pretty much, and that's really all I'm going to say. So the Death of Stalin in general, I really did not know much going in this movie. All I knew is that it had Jason Isaacs, who was being talked about a lot, who at the time I thought played Joseph Stalin. I thought, he was actually going to be the one that played him, but no, he plays a completely different character. And that it supposedly was more of a comedy, which that really surprised me. I thought this was going to be more of a serious film, but no, this is a comedy, and knowing all that, I'm glad I didn't go in knowing a lot because The Death of Stalin is an absolute riot. I really love this movie. This is easily one of the funniest movies I have seen in quite some time that also has some really clever humor in it, and we're just getting into it right now, starting off with the cast. Now, with a movie like this that has such a star-studded cast, it really is hard to find one main star that I think really stole the show, but I do want to talk about our main character, because, there is one main character, and that is Steve Buscemi, as the character of Nikita Khrushchev, who, this is someone who, he's very loyal to Stalin and things like that, and you can tell he really wants this control, and there's just a lot of really funny stuff with him. I thought he did a really great job throughout this movie, and similar to all the actors here, he does for the most part play it straight. Like, sure, this is really silly what they're doing with him, but he does actually play it straight, and I thought he did a really good job, and I was definitely very impressed by him here. And then Simon Russell Beale as Lavrenti Beria is probably the most multi-layered character out of everyone, because there are times this movie where you flat out despise him. You're like, this is a horrible person. Why is he in charge? Why does he have this position? Why does he have so many people supporting him? But then there are points where you do actually kind of feel for him, and you can actually see where he's coming from. And I did think he did a really good job with that. He is very funny at points. He has a lot of really funny lines and things like that. But he also did have some of the more heartwarming moments when it came to him and Andrea Riseborough's character. And I thought he did a really good job in this film. I think definitely he was one of the standouts, and I was very impressed by him here. All the other actors here, I think, all did a really great job. Rupert Friend, oh my god, Rupert Friend. He is basically Stalin's very erratic son who frequently is, he's freaking out. He doesn't think that these men are at all the people who should be in charge, to conduct this funeral and things like that. I thought he was absolutely hilarious. And then Andrea Riseborough, similar to him, she's just trying to keep her brother under control pretty much, and I thought their relation was honestly really funny. I love what they did with them. Jeffrey Tambor's really great here. Patty Considine. Jason Isaacs, let's talk about him. He shows up very late into this movie, but once he's there, he is a definite scene stealer. He has some really great stuff in this film. I thought he was absolutely hysterical. His introduction, for one, I thought was great, and he honestly had me dying. I think, honestly, most of these actors really do a fantastic job. There isn't a single actor in here that I didn't think wasn't on their A game, and I was definitely very, very happy with the with most of the performances here. But now let's get to the directing and the writing, because the directing is really what I want to talk about. Armando Inucci's directing for this film is definitely very unique, because you would think a film like this, where it's portraying all of these very really inherently unlikable people. Like, objectively, these people are terrible. I mean, they are not at all someone that you can really root for. They are very irredeemable. They are very loyal to this communist and things like that. So, no, they're not necessarily likable people. I do think it was a smart decision to basically direct this in the sense, of satire, because this entire film is pretty much a satire for just how ignorant and how incompetent all of these people really were, and how they really didn't know what they were doing. And it's directed not in the sense of a parody film. I think people have said that, and I honestly wouldn't compare it to that. I would compare it more to something like Monty Python, where they are playing it straight, but it is absurd what's going on, and the things that you're seeing are absolutely ridiculous. And I think that was definitely very well handled when it came to the directing. I thought he did a really good job with the comedic moments, which, they are constant throughout this film. There was rarely a point in this movie where I wasn't gut-busting laughing. I thought there were some absolutely hysterical moments, and I thought the directing was really spot on here. There is some dramatic stuff as well, but for the most part, it is very much a comedy, and I was very impressed by that. Then we get to probably my biggest problem with this movie, which the writing, let me just say, in terms of laughs, this movie has plenty of them. This is maybe the funniest movie I've seen this year. It's tied with Game Night right now, but this honestly might have been funnier than Game Night. Again, just because of how creative and different it is. I mean, there's a whole gag in this film where they are trying to figure out what to do with Stalin's body, and despite the fact that that should be their main concern, everyone seems to be, the main thing that everyone seems to be questioning is why Steve Buscemi's character showed up in just pajamas. And again, it's something that doesn't really sound that funny, but when you see it, it is absolutely hysterical. Just seeing their complete disregard, for any sort of human interaction or compassion or things. I mean, they don't give a shit about anyone in this movie. They care about the most mundane things, and it was honestly hysterical. I really love what they did there. Rupert Friend, like I said, he had some great gags as well. His introduction in the movie, like the first scene we get with him involving this basically this hockey team that he's watching, again, was hysterical. I love what they do with them. I love that no one in this movie, what I really loved about this film is that, these, like I said, they're very unlikable people. These are not really people that you should, root for or anything like that. And the film, similar to how in the movie they have complete disregard for any humans, human feelings whatsoever, the movie has any sort of, care for them. It doesn't really care about them at all. It shows that these men were idiots and that they didn't all know what they were doing, and they really did not know how to handle this situation. And to see it gets out of hand, pretty much throughout the movie, but things just kind of get worse and worse, and it escalates more and more throughout the movie, and I think that definitely was very well handled. I really did enjoy the story here. I did think it was very interesting. However, where the film is lacking for me are these characters, because like I said, they're not likable people. However, I do think the film could have done just a bit more to latch us onto the character. Not necessarily make them likable, but just get us something where, yes, I want to see more of them. Yes, I like this character. I like where they're going with them. And the film just doesn't really do that. There really isn't a character in this movie that I really did latch onto. There are hints of some interesting stuff, like there is some really interesting stuff with Beria's character. There is some really interesting stuff with, Khrushchev's character. There is some really interesting stuff with Stalin's kids, but there just wasn't one character that I'm like, I really want to know more about them. I want to really, find out more about who they are, what their background is. There just wasn't really anything there, and I did feel the film was a bit lacking in that regard, and that wouldn't be a huge problem for me if it wouldn't be for the third act of this movie, which, without spoiling anything, while the majority of this movie is a comedy, when we get to the third act, it actually does get a little bit more serious. Sure, there definitely are comedic elements, but it does get a bit more serious, and I think it just became a little bit too story driven. And I get what they were trying to do. Obviously, this is historical fiction, and obviously this did happen, not necessarily in this way, but this is a piece of history, and they want to portray it accurately, and I'm well aware of that. It's just, for me, I feel because of the fact that I didn't really care about these characters when the situation was going on and the way the climax does end, while it is entertaining and it definitely was well handled, I didn't really feel like, oh, this character absolutely does, what happens to some of these characters, yes, they definitely do deserve it, but there wasn't really anyone I was rooting for, and I did feel that that was lost a bit, some of the just a bit development of some of these characters. There just really wasn't much of them, despite being very loyal to Stalin. There wasn't really much else of their characters, and I think they could have done a lot more with them overall. And again, it's not so much that I wanted to like these characters, it's not that. I'm just saying that when certain things do go down in the film, you don't really care that much. Like, there isn't really that moment where it's like, oh, I care about this character. It's not the characters that are likable, it's the actors that are portraying them and the way that they, go about these characters that give them that likability. And the fact that this is a very silly film, so when the film does get serious, it just doesn't 100% work. Luckily, that's only a small fraction of the film. It's just when it does take that turn in the third act, it just didn't 100% work for me in the way I think they wanted it to. So I did feel that, again, comedy-wise, this is hilarious. I was laughing hysterically throughout it. There are so many great jokes in the film. Some that I really don't want to spoil, honestly, because they're not something you expect. Like, it's not very obvious jokes at all. They're jokes you really have to think about, and it's very smart. Also very dark, admittedly, very dark humor, but I do think it is very well handled, and all the actors really do shine in that regard. But again, it's just the characters, I think, was a bit lacking. The cinematography here is great. This is based on a comic book, and at points it does very much feel that way. For example, when they introduce each character, they kind of like tell you a brief thing about them, and they have them doing like this ridiculous situation, and it was actually really cool. I really love the cinematography here. You felt like you were in the 1950s, and again, it is playing it safe, so it doesn't really have any sort of different style to it. I really did enjoy the cinematography overall, though. The score also is really great. It's very playful. It knows that it's really dumb, and it's very self-aware, and I really enjoyed that. And then the editing, I thought this film was extremely well paced. There wasn't a single moment that really did drag for me, to be honest with you. And I do think some of the characters are a bit underused here. Olga Kurylenko especially is underused. I don't know why she's the main character here, honestly. She really does not have much to do. Jason Isaacs, even though I did think we got some good stuff with him, I did feel his character was underused. But honestly, guys, I was having so much fun with this movie that these complaints aren't really that big of a deal. I think this is still an incredibly entertaining film that I definitely do want to check out again. It's not going to be for everyone, because I can understand if people are saying, oh, these people were fucked up and this isn't something to, make light of, and I completely understand that. Don't, believe me, I totally understand where someone is coming from if they don't want, they are not happy that the fact that this was more of a comedic approach, but I just think the way it was handled, I couldn't really see them doing this any better, and I am going to give The Death of Stalin overall a B+. But overall, guys, in my review of The Death of Stalin, the most guys thought from overall, left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.